good evening and welcome to this AZ Votes 2024 special edition of Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. Tonight we welcome Republican U.S. Senate candidate Kari Lake. Ms. Lake and Democratic candidate Ruben were invited to participate in a debate as part of the station's AZ Votes 2024 election coverage initiative. Ms. Lake accepted the invitation. Mr. Gallego declined. But because Arizona PBS remains committed to providing viewers with opportunities to hear directly from candidates, the station extended invitations for one-on-one interviews. We're currently working with Mr. Gallego's campaign to schedule his interview, but today we again welcome Kari Lake to Arizona Horizon. Good to see you. Thank you so much for making time for us. We do appreciate this.
It's good to be back,
yes.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity. Looking forward to a robust discussion.
Yes, let's make it robust. Let's start with the fact, just the why. Why are you running for United States Senate? No elective office as yet. Why are you doing this? I mean, we're talking the United States Senate here. National importance, worldwide significance. Why are you running for this and how are you qualified?
I think we need to get more citizens involved in politics and fewer politicians. And we've seen some of the lifelong politicians, people who have made a career out of being in politics, and we've seen that they've continually made terrible votes to hurt us. And one of the people I'm running against right now, Ruben, has done just that in Congress. And when I recognized that he was trying to push a more moderate person, a more moderate Senator, Kyrsten Sinema, out of office because she wasn't radical left enough, I realized we've got to get in there and fight for this seat. This is a really important seat. He wanted to push her out. She became an independent, as many people know, and fought to save the filibuster. And Ruben was furious about that and said, well, I'm going to challenge her. And knowing how radical his voting record is, Ted, I said, someone's got to jump in there and stop this. He's too radical for Arizona to be in the U.S. Senate.
To stop this is one thing, but again, your qualifications, because once you do stop it, you are on Capitol Hill. You are a member of the United States Senate. There's a lot that goes on there. And again, you haven't held government office before. How are you qualified?
Actually, I think that's at the top of my resume. We don't want bureaucrats. We don't want more bureaucrats. We want real people who've worked real jobs. And I covered this state, as you know, as a fair and honest journalist for 27 years. I've been a broadcast journalist for 30 years. I understand the issues of this state probably better than most people in Washington, D.C. understand their states. I've covered the issues for so many years, and I know the people of Arizona better than anybody in this state. I've had a long relationship with them, so understanding the issues, understanding the people, and knowing what's going on in our state right now is untenable, and we need to bring a change to Washington, D.C.
Got a lot to get to here tonight, but I want to get this out of the way. Let's get to it. Do you still maintain that you won the 2022 governor's race?
We had a lot of problems in the 22 race, and we're fighting to have election integrity. It wasn't run properly. It wasn't run lawfully, and so we're fighting for election integrity. What has to change is we can't continue to have elections where every election, one side or the other says there were major problems. And the more we drag out elections and turn it into election season, the further away we get from election day, like it used to be when you and I signed up to vote many years ago. We used to have election day. Now we have election month, opens up a lot of problems. And so we're fighting to make sure that we can turn our elections around. The election was not run properly, and I don't believe it was run lawfully either.
If you don't believe it was run lawfully, there have been no prosecutions, there have been no convictions, there have been no victories at trial, at appeals, and Supreme Court. I mean, at what point do you say, did you give up that particular effort and simply move on?
I never want to move on from pushing for honest and transparent elections, and I don't think anybody would want to. If we see problems in an election, it's our duty to call them out and try to make them better. This is one of the reasons I want to go to D.C. We've got a lot of problems, and people are afraid to point out the problems and then work to solve them. I'm sick of watching politicians kick the can down the road. Huge problems, ignore it, gloss over it, throw money at it, but never fix it. So I'm somebody who wants to get things done.
Last point on this. Problems are one thing, but claims of an election fraud, election being rigged, and again, that you rightfully won the election, that's a whole different thing. And it comes to judgment and character. I'm not just bringing this up, bring it up. Arizona voters want to know, should they send someone to Washington, the upper chamber of commerce, who's tilting at windmills here? Nothing has been proven illegal. Now, there have been questions and there have been concerns, and you've raised them, but nothing illegal. You mentioned law. Nothing against the law has been found. When do you stop with this?
Well, we're working right now with serious problems right now where they are finding things were not followed, the law wasn't followed. Right this minute as we speak, we're finding out that more than 200, about 220,000 voters fell through a loophole and have not proven citizenship. So we still have problems, Ted. I just want to make sure that our elections are fair and honest, and I would certainly hope that you do as well. I want every legal vote to count, whether you are the most liberal Democrat or the most conservative Republican, or where most of Arizona is, somewhere in between. I want every legal vote to count, but I certainly don't want invalid votes counting. I don't want people who are here illegally to vote. And my opponent, Ruben Gallego, has voted twice now, just a minute, Ted, he's voted twice now to allow people who've come in illegally to not only get asylum, but to have the ability to vote. The American people aren't for that, and I'm going to fight to make sure only American citizens are allowed to vote.
We're going to ask him about that because I can't remember him saying that, but I do want to.
Well, it would be nice if he was here to answer
it. Would be.
And I would not hold your breath if I were you about him showing up. If you noticed, he's not doing press conferences. If he does, he only takes one or two questions from people he has chosen to ask the question. So he's not very transparent. He's running from his record.
Last question on this, and again, I'm going to go back to the first question on this. I mean, you're running for Senate, but it sounds like you think you are the governor of Arizona and you won that race. Get the line. Give us a definitive, I'm out of that, I'm into this.
Well, I'm obviously running for U.S. Senate, yeah, but I'm also fighting for transparent and honest elections. I'm running to be your next U.S. Senator, and whether we agree or disagree, Ted, I want to represent you well. I want to represent everybody watching and be a senator for all people of Arizona. I think the people of Arizona know I'm a fighter, and we need someone to go to Arizona and fight for our state, not someone who's going to be there just fighting for the lobbyists and what the lobbyists want, and that's what my opponent has done. He's married to a lobbyist, and he carries the water for all of her bills. I think it's like 34 or 38 bills that he's co-sponsored and pushed have been her lobbying firm's agenda. I don't want a lobbying firm's agenda motivating a U.S. Senator from Arizona. I want the people and the needs of our state motivating the Senate candidate.
We're not going to get an answer, I think, regarding whether or not you still think you won the 2022 gubernatorial race. But that's, I understand that.
I think you can look back at every interview I've done and you can figure out where I stand on it. But here we are, what, 5 minutes into this?
Yes.
We haven't talked about inflation. You know,
that's because I can't get an
let me
answer
just for
from
a
you,
minute.
Kari.
Let me just for a minute, Ted.
Please.
Let me just for a minute. You talk about me every week on this show. You never invited me on. You get your group of liberal journalists, propagandists, and you talk a lot about the election. You can't move on. I'm moving on. I'm running for U.S. Senate. I'm not running for governor right now. I'm running for U.S. Senate. Just a moment, if I may answer.
Please.
And you want to just focus on the last election, something you've accused me of focusing on.
I'm asking you because it comes to and it goes to questions of character and of judgment and whether or not someone who, again, persists in saying something that hasn't been proven and evidence doesn't show, should they be representing Arizona on Capitol Hill? That's why I'm asking.
You know who should be representing people on Capitol Hill? People who care to fight for the people of Arizona.
All right.
And any voter that's been disenfranchised, I will fight for.
Let's talk about
But let's talk about character. Let's talk about character real quick, Ted. Because my opponent, before he got into politics, which was a brief little moment, decided to open a bank and be partners with a bank for illegal immigrants. And while he was there, turns out he bilked primarily Latino immigrants out of their life savings. He went on, and they got investigated for fraud. He went on to work for an ambulance company that ended up being under federal investigation for defrauding Medicare. When he worked at the city hall, he actually had many accusations of harassment by a 20-year-old female intern. When she complained about the harassment at the hands of Ruben Gallego, he got her fired. He went over to the legislature. This is his experience, by the way.
Right.
And he was called the troll by his own colleagues because of the way he treated women, belittling them, screaming at them. He even had a sexual harassment charge against him. To me, that says a lot about character. So let's talk about character. Is that the character of somebody we want in the U.S. Senate?
Those are accusations. Those are accusations that you are making, and we will have to check on those accusations because
he's a hothead, and he talks about being a hothead in his book. So you should maybe read his book.
I did read his book actually, and I read his book, and I interviewed him after reading the book. Let's talk about immigration. You have called for the immediate arrest and deportation of those who aren't here with official and legal authorization. Do you still want that to happen? And what do you think the ramifications of something like that would be?
The immediate arrest? I'm calling for the repatriation of people who have come in illegally under the Biden invasion. In the past 3.5 years, we've had upwards of 20 million people who've poured across our country illegally. You and I and everybody out watching tonight is footing the bill for their housing, footing the bill for their EBT cards, which has thousands of dollars of food for them to purchase food on it. And they're taking jobs and depressing the wages of American citizens who are watching tonight.
80% of those who are here without legal authorization have been here for more than 10 years.
I'm talking about the people who poured across during the Biden invasion.
Okay, how do you, differentiate between those people, A, and those who have been here for more than 10 years?
Because they're being processed and we have information
and how do you deport them? Do you use law enforcement? Do you use the National Guard? Do you use the mill? How do you get this done?
Well, we will start with the people who are here and encounter the police in a criminal way, and we will deport them. We'll hand them over to ICE, and we'll work on deporting them. This is not impossible. We have to work out all of the details of that, obviously, but because it's a difficult task, we shouldn't do it, Ted?
Well, no, my question is...
Because it's a difficult task, we shouldn't do it?
My question is, should you deport people who have American-born children here? They're not authorized. The children are. Do you separate those families?
I'm talking about people who've poured in the past 3 years. We'll work through the details of it once we start. You know, we got to win the election, then we'll work through the details. But let me tell you, Ted, the people watching tonight want to repatriate these people home. We have to save our homeland. In order to save our homeland, Ted, we got to send them back to their homeland. And I think it is a compassionate thing to do. And maybe we make it in their best interest to pack up and go. We will give them a ticket home. We can move large numbers of people.
If you move large numbers of people, there are studies that have been shown. I think University of Colorado did a study, George Mason University, which is hardly a liberal institution, analyzed the details here. For every 1 million people deported, 88,000 U.S.-born folks would lose their jobs. Is that worth it?
I don't know. I'd have to see that study. I don't tend to trust a lot of studies coming out of some of the liberal outlets right now.
Well, George Mason, it would be a shock to them if they were called a liberal university. But here's the question. If it's not a one-for-one transactional kind of a thing. The economy, as you know, is complicated and it's intricate. Mm-hmm. You can't lose all these folks without it affecting the economy significantly.
The people who've come in the past 3.5 years have invaded our country. This has been an invasion of our country, and it's not fair to the American citizen, Ted. And you want to talk about the economy? Let's talk about the economy.
Please.
When you take 21 million people, or 10 million, whatever the estimate is, because I don't tend to believe the Biden administration. They've lied about numbers when it comes to jobs. I don't believe we have an accurate figure about how many people have poured in. This is affecting our economy and our ability to afford things, Ted. People, they have to live somewhere. They're taking housing from Americans. This is why 3 cities in Arizona are on the list of the top 10 cities in the country where rent prices have shot up. It probably doesn't affect you, Ted, because you make a good living. But people out there are struggling right now, and I care about the people out there struggling.
Well,
I know that you appear to care more about people here illegally. I care about the American citizens, and I'm very concerned that the media has not covered this well.
First of all, the media has covered this well. Secondly, Jerome Powell, Fed chair, says that in certain regions of this country, he says this is a quote, in certain regions of this country, there might be an immediate uptick in terms of immigrants coming in and rental prices. But in the long term, no effect. It's neutral. This is
Ted, this is basic supply and demand. You don't have to be...
It's more than basic supply and demand. It's an intricate economy.
Where are they living?
It's an intricate economy where people...
Where are they living, Ted?
So the CBO says immigration is neutral.
Americans are living in tents on the street.
CBO says immigration is neutral as far as the economy and as far as inflation in particular is concerned. Jerome Powell, the head of everything inflation, says it's neutral as well. Are they wrong? Are they wrong?
I'm not blaming illegal immigrants for inflation. You know who I am blaming? People like Ruben Gallego, who's voted for the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the $1.9 trillion spending bill. I'm blaming Kamala Harris and Ruben Gallego for the inflation. They're spending money like there's no tomorrow. When you print money like there's no tomorrow, you cause inflation to shoot up. And that's exactly what they've done.
The $6.6 billion CHIPS and Science Act, you would not have supported that?
The CHIPS Act,
yes.
There were some problems with it. I liked parts of it, but other parts I didn't like. And look at what happened over at Intel. They got billions of dollars. They got a fortune. and then they let off 15,000 workers. I think we needed to have a deal. If you're going to get this money, you're not going to lay off 15,000 workers.
Without this act, the TSMC in the West Valley likely would not have happened.
I'm not saying I don't support it. I'm saying if I were in the Senate, I would have wanted to change it up.
But that's government spending there, and so is the Infrastructure Act, in which Arizona's received upwards of $7 billion.
Let's talk
last
about
time I
the
checked.
Inflation Reduction Act. We could rename it the Inflation Production Act. Are you denying that we've had inflation shoot through the roof and that things haven't gotten unaffordable?
Well, I'm not denying that, but I am pointing out that the economy right now, GDP is up, unemployment is down, inflation is eased to the point where interest rates have been dropped by Jerome Powell.
I like how you said that. It's eased.
Of course it has.
Here's how inflation works, Ted.
Inflation is a gauge of increase, and it has
inflation goes up a few percentage points, the price goes up.
Stock market is playing
Inflation
touch and
goes up
go
a little more.
with record numbers here.
Okay.
And you're saying the economy is, I think your quote
You know what?
was,
I have a great idea for you. When you
falling
retire
apart.
here, you should go work for Kamala Harris because you'd be a great spokesperson for her policies. Her policies are disastrous. The people out in Arizona know it. This is almost comical watching you stand up and push for these policies that are crushing the American family.
Explain why you say the economy is falling apart when all these indices show that it's not.
Well, let's look at some of the numbers. When they said the job growth number, they threw a huge number out. Every quarter, another huge number, job growth, only to have to revise it downward by 818,000 jobs. Now, you could call it a mistake, or you could say they're lying. But the economy, the real economy of moms and dads out there trying to put food on the table, the people I'm talking to, I talk to a lot more people in Arizona than you do, Ted, every day. I talk to thousands of people a week in Arizona, and they're struggling. I talked to a woman in the West Valley, a retiree. She said, Kari, I've always been a volunteer. I have donated and made my time available for the food banks. I've donated food, especially during the holidays. She said, for the first time in my life, I've had to go to a food bank now and put my hand out and ask for help. More and more families, if you don't mind, I'll finish this.
Please.
More and more families are having to go to food banks. I am worried about the family in Arizona struggling to make ends meet. The economy's not working for them, Ted. The rents are going up. We did a press conference the other day, a couple in their 60s, retirees. They're not one paycheck away. They're not one Social Security check away from going under. You know what they are? One unexpected bill away from going under and being homeless.
As a United States Senator,
and guess where the fastest growing
what would you do to address these concerns and issues? Would you extend the Trump tax cut from 2017?
Yes.
Estimates are that it would add $4.6 trillion to the debt in the next 10 years. Is that a wise thing to do?
Yes, we're going to extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to cut taxes on tips and overtime. I think it's a great idea to cut taxes on overtime. You're rewarding people who are willing to work hard. And then we're going to start growing our way out of this. When President Trump gets back in office, we are going to start reshoring manufacturing. And Arizona is poised in a beautiful spot to reshore manufacturing. President Trump's going to work to make sure we're getting factories brought back to America, get people back in those jobs, and we're going to grow our way out of it. The revenues will grow. When we unleash the power of the individual in this country, and when we cut back regulations, which President Trump had done a great job cutting back regulations, and then Joe Biden came in and they have heaped more and more and more regulations on businesses, including many small businesses, which makes it impossible for them to compete with these corporations. We're going to pull back the regulations. We're going to extend the President Trump tax cuts.
Despite what it does to the federal deficit.
Ruben Gallego wants to get rid of them.
Despite what it does to the federal deficit.
We're going to be fine because we're going to start growing businesses again.
And
guess what?
Economists don't know what they're talking about when they say it increases $4.6 trillion over the next 10 years?
Yes, it may do that if we continue the growth that we have now, but not the growth we're going to have under a President Trump economy. They're actually putting those numbers together based on the stagnant economy we have now. We are going to grow our way out of this. Let me ask you to look backwards just a little bit. I want you to look back about 5 years ago when President Trump was in office, okay? We were doing great. Everybody was doing better, Ted. Everybody watching was doing better under President Trump, whether they loved him or hated him. We were doing better. Our economy was growing. Every sector of the economy was growing. I'm sorry you have a very short memory and don't remember that.
Actually, I don't have a short memory. I do have some numbers here. 4 years ago, the Dow was at 18,000. It's now over 40,000. 4 years ago, unemployment was 9.2%. It's now 4.2%. Explain, please.
Well, the Dow is not reflective of what somebody's doing in their own life. The Dow is not reflective of how affordable things are. You know, I'm really glad that you're doing okay affording food and that your rent price or your mortgage is doing okay and you can afford it. But the people out there can't afford it, Ted. They can't afford life right now under this.
I want to move on. I want to move on.
Listen, I want you to know, and I want the people out there to know, we are going to keep the Trump tax cuts.
You're going to extend the Trump tax cuts.
We're going to continue them. We're going to extend them.
Yes, you're going to extend them.
Ted and my opponent, Ruben wants to get rid of them. And what that's going to do is every Arizonan, it'll cost you $2,700 more a year if we get rid of them. Ted wants to get rid of them. And so does my opponent. And I'm sorry that they feel that way, but I want you to know I will go to Washington, D.C. and fight to keep and extend the Trump tax cuts and then go further. We're not going to tax your Social Security anymore. We're not going to tax your overtime pay, nor will we tax your tips. We are going to free you up to spend the money you earn and the money you have earned so that you can do better. Ted isn't for that, and my opponent, Ruben Gallego, is not for that.
Please stop saying that. Please stop saying that.
You're obviously not for that.
No, it's not obvious at all. Please stop saying that. It's not true.
Well, you're not for it.
It's not true. Okay?
So you are for it?
It's not
Are you
true.
for?
It doesn't matter what I think. This is about you,
Well,
Kari.
you're certainly making the argument for trying to get rid of them.
I'm trying to get you to explain yourself. You better be able to explain yourself if you're going to be a United States Senator.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay.
Thank you for lecturing me. I appreciate it.
You betcha, no problem. As far as
Give me some
abortion
more.
is concerned, where do you stand on abortion? Because in the past, it sounds like your position was different than it is now. Has it changed? It's not. It's okay to change. But has it changed from the past?
My position is that I'm running for U.S. Senate, and this is not going to be decided in the U.S. Senate. You're going to get one vote on abortion. I'm going to get one vote. The Supreme Court, as you know, pushed this decision back to the states. I know you're aware of that. So all 50 states are going to be deciding what their law is. And my vote, I'll have one vote, you'll have one vote, and we're going to decide in November what our abortion law is. As your U.S. Senator, I will respect what the voters of Arizona decide, and I will not vote. May I finish before you start pointing at me?
Please.
Or do you want to talk again?
I want to ask you a question.
Well, can I finish my answer?
Please, go ahead.
Jeez. And when I get to the U.S. Senate, I will never vote for a national ban on abortion. I just won't. And you can try to change my
Would you
mind.
vote on federal minimums as far as abortion is concerned?
I will never vote for a national ban on abortion, nor will I vote to spend a penny of federal money on abortions.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask. I want to ask that because in the past you have called it the ultimate sin in this studio. You said that you don't believe abortion pills should be legal. You called on Newsmax, you called it the killing, the sacrifice, the execution of babies in the wombs of the mother. If you're that strong against abortion, should you not be fighting for legislation that outlaws abortion?
I believe, like the Supreme Court, that it should be decided in the state. And I want the people of Arizona to decide what our abortion law is. And I will respect that decision.
Okay, we're running out of time here, but I got to ask you this because, again, you're going to the world's most deliberative body. That's where you want to go. That's your goal here, to go to the United States Senate. And you have a contentious style. You've cultivated a contentious style. You've tried to be contentious with me. Do you think that Arizonans want that to represent them in the upper chamber of Congress on Capitol Hill? Is that what Arizonans want to see from their United States Senator?
I am not contentious. I actually am, I'm in a debate with you because you're debating me right now, rather than asking just fair questions. I think you're kind of pushing back, and that's why I'm treating you this way. But I am a fighter for the people of Arizona. I'm also somebody who can work with people. I come from a family of 9, Ted. I'm the youngest of 9. We had to compromise on everything in my family. My opponent doesn't believe in compromise. As a matter of fact, because he cannot compromise, and he is so belligerent with people, he wants to get rid of the filibuster. Do you think that's a smart move to get rid of the filibuster, Ted?
That doesn't matter what I think, Kari. If my
it does matter,
opinion matters to you as far as what you're doing on Capitol Hill, please let me know, and I'll go join you there in Washington, and we'll work together and figure something out. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. And it also matters that you say you want to work with people. Can you work with Democrats when you've basically said that they have a Marxist conspiracy among Democrats to hate the country and to destroy America? Mitch McConnell says when you're on Capitol Hill, you got to work with Democrats.
Of course I can work with Democrats. Let me remind you, I worked in the media for 30 years. The 95% of the people in any news operation are Democrat. I worked with Democrats every day. Of course I can work with Democrats. But there is a level of Marxism being pushed right now, Ted. They're trying to get rid of the First Amendment. Do you agree with this level of censorship that the Democrats are pushing for? I would hope you wouldn't, because your job relies on the First Amendment being strong. And for some reason now, Democrats have decided that it's okay to censor. It's okay to take away the First Amendment rights of some people if they don't agree with them, that they should be censored. I don't agree with that. I don't want people censored. I want to make sure our Constitution is solid and protected. And I'm going to go to the U.S. Senate and protect the U.S. Constitution for the good people of our state.
Okay, and you're willing to work with Democrats. You're willing to work with Democrats.
Of course I am. I've worked with Democrats my whole life.
Should you maybe not talk about them as being Marxist?
I think when you're pushing Marxist ideology, then you should label that as what it is. And I think we're seeing some of that right now. You talk about saving democracy. You know, the people talking about saving democracy have a candidate at the top of the ticket who hasn't earned a single vote. They wouldn't even allow other Democrats, when they forced Joe Biden out, who did earn 14 million votes, they wouldn't allow a single Democrat to come in and vie for the position of nominee. They just bestowed it upon Kamala Harris. I hope that you don't think that's right, because that's not democracy.
And again, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think.
Is it democracy?
I hope that you understand that this was not a debate. This was me asking you questions to explain yourself on issues that Arizonans want to hear.
And I appreciate that.
I hope you do, because in polling right now, regardless of what you think about Ruben Gallego, you're trailing in in all of these polls. Donald Trump is winning in a lot of these polls. And I had a viewer ask me to ask you, why do you think that is? And could it be this confrontational style that turns people off?
Well, I'm sorry if my personality turns you off, Ted.
It's
I'm
not
not trying to turn you on, okay?
I'm asking for the general
I'm going to
electorate.
tell you about the polling. I get polling every single day. I feel comfortable with our polling. My opponent has spent $75 million so far in attack ads and then image ads about him lying, trying to make him look like a cross between Mr. Rogers and G.I. Joe, when in fact he's voted 100% of the time with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their disastrous policies. So the fact that $75 million has been spent, and this is a neck-and-neck margin of error, race, which is what the reputable polling is showing, and my internal polling is actually showing me up. And so I feel comfortable with where the polling is, and I think that people, maybe you don't, but I do think that Arizonans do like me and respect me, and I appreciate anybody out there who votes for me, and I appreciate the people who are going to vote for me, because they don't want Ruben Gallego's open border policies anymore. They don't want the inflation. They don't want the cost of living being out of control. And they certainly don't want to have some of these other radical votes, like boys participating in sports with their girls.
We're out of time.
I don't know if you're a father, but I'm appalled by that.
We're out of time right now. Robust? Robust? Was it robust?
Yeah, I think it could have been a little fairer, Ted, but I'm happy to come back on.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, I'm sorry you
on.
feel that way, and I do thank you for coming on, and I do thank you for the discussion.
I appreciate the time as well.
Thank you so much.